The moment he said she's mine, something inside me stopped pretending it was just business. I didn't belong at the Romano Foundation Gala, not in my $79 black dress and borrowed heels that pinched after 30 minutes, not under chandeliers that probably cost more than my annual salary. I was there to manage the event logistics, keep the donors happy, and disappear before midnight. That was the plan. Then I spilled champagne on Ethan Romano. Not enough to ruin the fabric of his tailored suit, just enough to make every head within a 10-foot radius turn. I expected irritation, maybe a cold dismissal. Instead, he looked at me like I'd interrupted a thought he didn't want anyone else to hear. His eyes were steady, calculating, the kind of eyes that measured risk the way other men measured stock prices. I apologized. He said it was fine. His voice was low, controlled, the kind of voice that didn't need to be loud to be obeyed. I should have walked away. I didn't. 6 hours later, I was standing near the terrace doors when Lucas Moretti leaned back in his chair, swirling 12-year-old scotch like he owned Manhattan. He watched me the way men like him watch anything they think they can acquire. "She's hot," he said, not even lowering his voice. The words floated across the marble floor like a challenge. I felt heat crawl up my neck. I wasn't part of their conversation. I was staff. Invisible. Where I was supposed to be. Ethan didn't laugh. He didn't glance at me. He didn't hesitate. "She's mine." The room went silent. Not the polite silence of high society. The heavy kind. The kind that lands in your chest and stays there. My heartbeat stuttered. Mine? I wasn't anyone's. I turned toward him before I could stop myself. He looked almost as surprised as I felt, like the words had moved faster than his thoughts. Lucas smirked. "Since when?" he asked lightly, but there was an edge under it. Ethan stood then, slow and deliberate. Adjusting the cuff of his shirt like this was nothing more than a minor correction. "Since now," he replied. People resumed their conversations. The string quartet kept playing. But something had shifted. I felt it in the air, in the way security subtly repositioned themselves, in the way Lucas's smile didn't quite reach his eyes. I should have dismissed it as ego, as territorial nonsense between powerful men who were used to claiming everything in sight. But when Ethan's gaze finally met mine across the room, it wasn't arrogance I saw. It was something sharper, protective, almost reluctant, like he hadn't meant to say it out loud, like the truth had slipped past his control. And for the first time that night, I realized I wasn't just standing in a ballroom. I was standing in the middle of a rivalry that had just turned personal. The air felt different after that, like the temperature in the ballroom had dropped 5 degrees, even though the crystal chandeliers still glowed warm above us. I told myself to breathe, to remember that I was here to work, not to become the center of a power struggle between two men who owned half of Manhattan. I turned away first. I always do. It is easier that way. I walked toward the service corridor with my clipboard pressed against my chest, pretending I needed to check on the dessert table. My hands were steady. My pulse was not. Halfway down the hall, I heard footsteps behind me. Not rushed. Not loud. Just measured. I did not need to turn to know who it was. Ethan Romano did not chase. He approached. "Claire." The way he said my name was quiet, but it stopped me more effectively than if he had grabbed my arm. I faced him slowly. Up close, he smelled faintly of cedar and something clean, expensive. His tie was slightly loosened now, like the evening had begun to weigh on him. "You do not get to say things like that," I said before he could speak. My voice did not shake. I made sure of it. His jaw tightened, just barely. "I know." That was not the response I expected. "Then why did you?" I asked. He looked at me for a long moment, not scanning, not assessing, just looking. "Because he was looking at you like you were a prize," he said. "And I do not share." The words should have angered me. Instead, they unsettled me. "I am not something to be shared or claimed," I replied. "I work here. That is all." He nodded once, slow. "I am aware." Silence stretched between us. In the distance, I could hear the faint swell of a violin and the soft clink of silverware. Normal sounds. Ordinary. They did not match the tension standing 3 feet in front of me. "You embarrassed me," I said quietly. Something flickered in his expression. Regret, maybe. That was not my intention. Then what was? I pressed. He exhaled, controlled, as if choosing each word with care. Lucas Moretti does not compliment without calculating the cost. When he calls someone attractive, he is announcing interest. When he announces interest, he is setting a target. I felt a chill move down my spine. And you saying I am yours fixes that? It complicates it, he said. For him. There it was again. Not dominance. Strategy. Protection disguised as possession. I crossed my arms, more to steady myself than to create distance. You could have handled it without dragging me into whatever this rivalry is. His gaze sharpened slightly. You were already in it the moment he noticed you. That landed harder than I expected. I hated that part of me believed him. He stepped back then, giving me space without being asked. I will make sure nothing about tonight affects your life, he said. You have my word. I almost laughed at that. A promise from a man like him felt heavier than a contract. And what if I do not want your protection? I asked. He held my eyes, unwavering. Then I will respect that. A pause. Softer now. But I will still watch. My heart skipped, not from fear, but from the certainty in his voice. He was not flirting. He was not posturing. He was adjusting his world around a decision he had made in less than a second. And the most dangerous part was this. I was starting to realize he had not said those words to win. He had said them because he meant them. He did not touch me again that night, but I felt him everywhere. Not in the room, not physically close, but present. Watching, calculating, adjusting. I returned to the ballroom with my shoulders squared and my clipboard held like armor. The string quartet had shifted into something lighter, almost cheerful, as if the tension from earlier had dissolved into polished laughter and champagne refills. But I knew better. Power does not dissolve. It rearranges. Lucas Moretti stood near the bar when I stepped back onto the floor. His smile was easy, practiced. He lifted his glass slightly when he saw me, like we shared a secret. I ignored him. I checked the seating chart. I signaled the catering manager. I reminded myself that I had worked too hard for this career to let two men with billion-dollar egos disrupt it. Still, I could feel the shift in attention. Conversations softened when I passed. Security positioned themselves a little closer to the terrace doors. Subtle, controlled, intentional. 20 minutes later, I stepped outside for air. The Manhattan skyline stretched in front of me, glass towers glowing against the midnight sky. The wind carried a sharp chill, maybe 40 degrees at most, cutting through the thin fabric of my dress. I wrapped my arms around myself and finally exhaled. You should not be alone. His voice came from behind me again, steady as ever. I did not turn right away. I am not fragile, I said. That is not what I said. I faced him then. Up close, the city lights caught in his dark eyes, softening them in a way the ballroom never could. Lucas is not finished, he continued. He does not like to be contradicted. Then perhaps you should not contradict him on my behalf, I replied. He studied me for a second, like he was recalculating. You think this is about pride, he said quietly. It is not. Then what is it about? The question lingered between us. He stepped closer, but not enough to crowd me. Just enough that I could see the faint tension in his expression, the kind a man carries when he is not used to explaining himself. I have spent my life choosing what belongs in my world, he said. People, alliances, risks. I do not make impulsive claims. I swallowed. Yet you did. His gaze dropped briefly, then returned to mine. Yes. There was no arrogance in it. Only certainty. The terrace door slid open behind us, and I saw Lucas step out, adjusting his cufflinks as if he had all the time in the world. He stopped when he saw us standing there. The look on his face was polite. Too polite. Am I interrupting? He asked smoothly. Ethan did not look away from me. Yes, he replied. The word was calm. Final. Lucas chuckled softly. Claire, was it? I hope my earlier comment did not offend you. I simply appreciate beauty. I met his gaze directly. I am not a gallery piece, Mr. Moretti. Something flashed in his eyes, not anger, but interest. He enjoyed resistance. That much was clear. Of course not, he said lightly. I look forward to speaking again. He turned and walked back inside without another word. The silence he left behind felt heavier than before. I realized then that this was not a misunderstanding. It was a line drawn. And whether I liked it or not, I was standing on it. I looked back at Ethan. You said you would respect my choice, I reminded him. He nodded once. I will. A pause. Softer now. But I will not ignore a threat. My pulse quickened, not from fear, but from the realization that tonight had shifted something permanent. Not just between two rivals. Between us. The rest of the gala moved forward like nothing had happened, but I felt the fault line under every polished smile. I stayed until the final donor left, until the last violin note faded, until the catering staff began clearing away crystal and linen like the night had been ordinary. It was nearly 1 in the morning when I finally stepped out of the Grande Astoria and into the cool Manhattan air. The city felt different after midnight. Quieter. Sharper. The sidewalks were slick from an earlier drizzle, reflecting the streetlights in long gold streaks. I told myself I was overthinking everything. 2 powerful men had exchanged words. That was all. I adjusted my coat and started walking toward the garage 2 blocks away where I had parked my car. My heels echoed against the pavement, steady and controlled. I did not look back. I did not need to. I could feel it. Not danger. Not exactly. Attention. Halfway down West 53rd Street, a black sedan slowed beside the curb. The tinted window lowered just enough for me to see the outline of a familiar profile. I said I would not ignore a threat, Ethan called out calmly. I stopped walking but did not step closer. And I said I am capable of taking care of myself. He opened the car door and stepped out instead. No rush. No urgency. Just quiet presence. You should not have to, he replied. The streetlight caught the edge of his expression, and for the first time since the gala began, he did not look like a man performing control. He looked focused. Protective. Lucas does not respond well to boundaries, he continued. Especially public ones. I folded my arms against the cold. Then perhaps you should not have drawn one. His jaw flexed slightly, but his voice remained even. I would draw it again. That unsettled me more than anything else he had said all night. Why? I asked. You barely know me. He stepped closer, close enough that I could see the faint crease between his brows. I know enough, he said. You do not look at powerful men with fear. You look at them like they are human. I blinked. That was not what I expected. And that matters to you. He nodded once. More than it should. The admission hung in the air between us, fragile and dangerous at the same time. A car passed at the intersection, headlights sweeping across us before fading away. The city kept moving. We did not. You are used to claiming things, I said quietly. Territory. Influence. People. I do not claim people, he corrected softly. I choose who stands beside me. My heart skipped at that. I hated that it did. I did not ask to stand beside you, I replied. I know. He held my gaze steadily. But you already are. Silence settled again, heavier now, not with tension but with recognition. Whatever had started inside that ballroom had followed us out into the night air. It was no longer about a rival or a careless comment. It was about choice. About lines drawn and not erased. I took a slow breath. If I walk away right now, I said, what happens? His answer came without hesitation. I make sure you get home safely. And I wait. My pulse quickened. For what? His eyes softened in a way I had not seen before. For you to decide whether I am worth stepping toward instead of away. The wind picked up, brushing my hair across my face. I did not move. Not yet. Because for the first time that night, I realized the most dangerous thing about Ethan Romano was not his power. It was his patience. I did not step toward him that night, but I did not walk away either. I let him drive behind me instead, his black sedan keeping a steady 2 car lengths back as I navigated downtown traffic toward my apartment in Midtown East. It felt absurdly formal, like a silent escort I had not agreed to but did not entirely reject. When I finally parked in front of my building, he remained across the street, headlights dimmed, engine still running. He did not get out. He did not wave. He simply waited until I reached my front door and disappeared inside. Only then did the sedan pull away. I told myself that was where it would end. The gala was over. The comment had been made. Lines had been drawn. By morning, it would fade into nothing more than a strange story I would never tell. I was wrong. At 9:45 the next morning, as I reviewed vendor invoices in my small corner office overlooking Lexington Avenue, my assistant stepped in with an expression that was equal parts confused and impressed. There is a delivery for you, she said. I frowned. I was not expecting anything. In the lobby downstairs sat a single arrangement of white orchids in a matte black box. No logo. No extravagance. Just precision. Tucked inside was a card with clean, deliberate handwriting. I respect your boundaries. Yar. That was all. No apology. No declaration. Just acknowledgement. I stared at the initials longer than I should have. It was not the kind of gesture meant to impress. It was meant to reassure. Which unsettled me more. Around noon, My phone buzzed with an unknown number. I let it ring twice before answering. Claire Bennett. You received the flowers. His voice was unmistakable. Calm. Controlled. I did. A pause. They are not a claim, he added. They are a courtesy. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the skyline beyond my window. You do realize most people would find this excessive. Most people were not placed in the middle of a rivalry last night. He replied evenly. There was no defensiveness in his tone. Just fact. Lucas has been making inquiries this morning, he continued. My fingers tightened slightly around the phone. About me? About your role in the event. Your background. Your schedule. The word schedule settled heavily in my chest. You see, he went on, softer now. This is what I meant when I said he does not like boundaries. I swallowed. And what exactly are you planning to do about that? Nothing that involves taking away your choice, he answered. But I will not allow him to make you uncomfortable. There it was again. Not control. Protection offered, not imposed. I closed my eyes for a second, steadying my breath. You cannot solve every situation by stepping in, I said quietly. I know. His reply came without hesitation. That is why I am asking instead of deciding. Silence lingered between us. In that silence, something shifted. This was no longer about territory. It was about trust. And if I ask you not to involve yourself? I said. He exhaled slowly. Then I will keep my distance. A beat. But I will still be watching from it. I opened my eyes and looked out at the city moving below me. Taxis weaving through traffic. People crossing streets without realizing how fragile control really was. You are very sure of yourself? I said. No, he corrected quietly. I am very sure about you. My heart reacted before my mind could argue. And that was the moment I realized this was no longer about surviving a gala. It was about deciding whether I was willing to step into a world that had already taken one step toward me. By late afternoon, the city felt tighter than usual, like something invisible had shifted its weight. I tried to focus on work. Contracts. Calls. Deadlines. Numbers are safe. Numbers do not look back at you. But every time my phone lit up, my pulse reacted before my thoughts could catch up. At 4:30, my assistant knocked again, hesitant this time. There is someone here asking for you, she said quietly. My stomach dropped. Who? He did not give a name. I stood slowly, smoothing my blazer as if fabric could steady nerves. When I stepped into the lobby, I saw him immediately. Not Lucas. Ethan. He stood near the windows overlooking Lexington Avenue, hands loosely clasped in front of him, posture relaxed but alert. He looked out of place in my modest corporate building, like a tailored shadow in a room built for fluorescent lights. When he turned and saw me, something in his expression softened. Not triumph. Not control. Relief. This is unnecessary, I said before he could speak. Perhaps, he replied calmly. But Lucas visited 2 of your vendors this afternoon. My chest tightened. And? He asked questions that suggested familiarity. His gaze held mine steadily. I prefer not to let familiarity grow where it is not welcome. I folded my arms, not in defense but in thought. You cannot monitor every conversation in Manhattan. No, he agreed. But I can monitor the ones that circle you. The words should have felt invasive. Instead, they felt intentional. Focused. Why does this matter so much to you? I asked, keeping my voice low. He did not answer immediately. The pause stretched just long enough to feel honest. Because I miscalculated, he said finally. I believed one statement would settle the matter. And it did not. No, his jaw tightened slightly. It escalated it. I exhaled slowly, absorbing that. You see, I said. This is what I was trying to avoid. I know, he replied. That is why I am here in person instead of making decisions without you. That landed deeper than I expected. I studied him for a moment, searching for arrogance, for entitlement. I found neither. Only a man accustomed to control, choosing restraint. What do you want from me? I asked. His answer came without hesitation. Permission. The word surprised me. For what? To handle Lucas directly. My heart skipped. And what does handle mean? A conversation, he said evenly. Clear. Final. Silence wrapped around us, thick and complicated. Outside, taxis honked and pedestrians moved like nothing extraordinary was unfolding inside this lobby. I looked at him carefully. If I say no, his gaze did not waver. Then I walk away. A beat. And I trust that you can manage your own boundaries. There it was again. Choice. Always choice. I realized then that this was not about dominance. It was about alignment. He was asking to stand beside me, not in front of me. My pulse steadied. One conversation, I said quietly. Nothing more. His shoulders relaxed almost imperceptibly. Understood. He stepped back, giving me space before I even needed it. You will not hear from him again after tonight. I did not know whether to believe that, but I knew one thing with certainty. The most powerful move Ethan Romano had made so far was not claiming me in a crowded ballroom. It was asking before he acted, and that changed everything. He did not tell me when he planned to speak to Lucas, and I did not ask. That was the agreement. One conversation. Clear. Final. I told myself that was enough. Still, I checked my phone. More than usual that evening. Every notification made my pulse flicker before settling again. By 7 o'clock, Manhattan had shifted into its evening rhythm. Office lights glowed above Lexington Avenue. Taxis lined up in yellow rows, and the sky faded into a deep blue that always made the city look almost cinematic. I was halfway through reviewing a venue contract when my phone buzzed. One message. Unknown number. It will not be necessary for us to speak again. The message was brief. Controlled. Signed with a single initial. L. I stared at the screen longer than I should have. There was no threat in it. No accusation. Just distance. A line redrawn. My heart did not race. It steadied. I did not respond. 10 minutes later, my phone rang again. This time, I knew before answering. It is done, Ethan said simply. His voice was calm, unchanged. What did you say to him? I asked. A faint pause. That your name is not a subject for negotiation. The words settled into my chest, warm and unsettling at the same time. And he agreed? He understood. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling of my small office. You make it sound easy. It was not, he replied. But it was necessary. Silence stretched between us, softer now. Not tense. Not guarded. You kept your word, I said quietly. I always do, he answered. I believed him. That realization felt heavier than anything else. Then what happens now? I asked. He did not answer immediately. When he spoke again, his voice carried something different. Not authority. Not calculation. Something almost careful. Now I step back, he said. Unless you ask me not to. My heart skipped once, deliberate and undeniable. You are very certain I will, I said. No, he corrected gently. I am certain that I want you to. The honesty in that sentence left no room for ego. Only intention. I stood and walked toward the window, watching the city move below me in streaks of light and motion. For the first time since the gala, I felt something settle inside me. Not fear. Not pressure. Clarity. You did not have to involve me in that ballroom, I said. You could have ignored it. I know, he replied. I tried. That surprised me. Tried. A soft exhale came through the phone. When he spoke about you, it felt wrong. Not strategic. Not territorial. Just wrong. The admission hung in the air between us. You are not used to that, I said. No, he agreed quietly. I am not. I closed my eyes for a second, letting the weight of that settle. He had not claimed me because he wanted control. He had reacted because something in him refused to let someone else define my place. If I ask you to dinner, he said after a moment, would that be crossing a boundary? I felt a slow smile curve across my face before I could stop it. That depends, I replied softly. On what? On whether you are asking as a rival or as a man. The pause that followed was steady and certain. As a man, he said. And for the first time since this began, I realized the line between power and choice had shifted. Not because he forced it, but because I was considering stepping across it on my own. I did not answer him immediately. I let the question linger between us, suspended in the quiet space of my office while the city outside continued moving without hesitation. Dinner. Not as a rival. Not as a calculated move. As a man. I had spent the last 24 hours guarding my independence like it was fragile glass. And yet, the idea of walking into a restaurant beside him did not feel like surrender. It felt like choosing. Tomorrow, I said finally. 7:30. Somewhere public. There was no hesitation in his reply. Of course. The simplicity of it disarmed me more than any grand gesture could have. The next evening, Manhattan was crisp and clear, 48 degrees with a sharp wind that carried the scent of rain. I chose the restaurant. A quiet Italian place on the Upper East Side with warm lighting and tables close enough to feel intimate, but not isolated. When I arrived, he was already there. Not at the head of the room. Not commanding attention. just standing when I approached, pulling out my chair with a quiet nod. No security hovered near the entrance. No entourage. Just him. You look relieved, I said as I sat down. A faint smile touched his mouth. I am. Why? Because you came. The honesty in that answer made something in my chest tighten. We ordered simply. Pasta. Mineral water. No. Spectacle. Conversation came easier than I expected. He spoke about growing up in Brooklyn, about inheriting expectations long before he inherited influence. I told him about building my career from nothing, about refusing to let powerful men dictate my path. He listened, not the distracted listening of someone waiting to speak. Real listening. At one point, he leaned back slightly, studying me with that same steady gaze from the ballroom. You are not impressed by power, he observed. I respect discipline, I replied. Not dominance. He nodded slowly. That is why I reacted. I tilted my head. In the ballroom? Yes. His voice lowered, not for secrecy, but for sincerity. When Lucas spoke about you like that, it felt like he was reducing something rare to a transaction. Silence settled over the table, soft and warm. And you? I asked quietly. Are you reducing me to something? His gaze did not waver. No, a single word. Firm. Measured. I am asking if you will let me stand beside you instead of in front of you. The difference mattered. I realized that now. Dinner stretched longer than planned. 2 hours passed unnoticed. Outside, the streetlights flickered on, casting gold across the sidewalk. When we stepped back into the cool air, there was no rush to part ways. I meant what I said, he murmured as we paused on the corner. About asking, not deciding. I studied him for a long moment, searching for the edge of control, the instinct to claim. I did not find it. Instead, I found patience. Intent. Choice. Then ask me something, I said softly. His eyes warmed, just slightly. May I see you again? The question was simple. No ownership. No declaration. Just a request. I felt the weight of everything that had happened since that ballroom. The rivalry. The lines drawn. The protection offered. And the space he had given me within it. Yes, I answered. And this time, when my heart skipped, it was not from tension. It was from anticipation. Because for the first time since this began, the power between us did not feel like something imposed. It felt shared. The second time I saw him, it did not feel accidental. It felt intentional. He arrived at my office building at exactly 6:30, not early enough to impress, not late enough to test me. When I stepped outside, the evening air carried a hint of rain, the kind that makes Manhattan glow under streetlights. He did not reach for my hand. He simply walked beside me, matching my pace without trying to guide it. That detail did not go unnoticed. We chose a different place this time, a quiet rooftop lounge overlooking the East River. The skyline shimmered across the water, reflections breaking and reforming with every passing boat. I leaned against the railing, watching the city breathe. You look calmer, he observed softly. I am, I admitted. There are no rivals here tonight. A faint smile touched his expression. Good. Silence settled comfortably between us. Not heavy, not tense. Just present. You handled Lucas without escalating things, I said after a moment. I was not certain you would. He turned slightly toward me. You expected retaliation. I expected pride. He nodded once. Pride is expensive. Clarity is cheaper. I let out a quiet laugh. That might be the most strategic sentence I have ever heard. It is also the most honest, he replied. The wind lifted a strand of my hair across my face, and before I could move it, he paused, as if asking permission without words. I brushed it away myself. His hand lowered without hesitation. Respect again. Always respect. Why me? I asked suddenly. The question had been circling my thoughts for days. He did not pretend to misunderstand. Because you did not look impressed, he answered. And you did not look intimidated. Most people are one or the other. I know. He stepped closer to the railing, leaving a careful distance between us. When Lucas spoke about you, I reacted because I did not like the idea of someone else defining you. The words settled in my chest. You could have let me define myself, I said quietly. I should have, he admitted. That admission mattered. He did not defend the instinct. He acknowledged it. And now? I asked. His gaze softened slightly. Now I am learning. The honesty in that statement disarmed me more than any bold declaration ever could. We stood there for a long moment, watching the lights ripple across the water. No music. No audience. No rivalry. Just two people balanced between independence and something new. You understand this will not be simple, I said finally. Nothing worth building is, he replied. I studied him in the dim glow of the rooftop. Lights. The man who had once drawn a line in a crowded ballroom now stood beside me without claiming space that was not offered. And if the rivalry resurfaces? I asked. His expression remained steady. Then we face it together. Not because I own you. Not because I need to prove something. But because I choose to stand beside you. The word choose echoed in my thoughts. Not mine. Not claim. Choose. I felt something shift inside me. Something steadier than attraction and stronger than curiosity. Trust. I did not know where this would lead. I only knew that the power between us no longer felt like something to resist. It felt like something to build. And for the first time, I was not afraid of stepping forward. Trust does not arrive loudly. It settles in quietly, in the small details you almost miss. A week passed without incident. No unexpected messages. No subtle inquiries. No tension coiled beneath ordinary days. Ethan did not hover. He did not send flowers. He did not appear unannounced. Instead, he called when he said he would. He showed up when we agreed. And when I canceled one evening because of a last-minute venue emergency, he simply replied, I understand. Let me know when you are free. No guilt. No pressure. That restraint meant more than any dramatic promise. Friday night found us walking through Central Park just after sunset. The air was crisp, just under 50 degrees, the trees lining the path stripped bare as winter approached. The city noise softened inside the park, replaced by distant laughter and the rhythmic sound of footsteps on gravel. You are quiet tonight, he observed gently. I am thinking, I admitted. About. I stopped walking and turned to face him. The lamplight cast a warm glow across his features, softening the sharp lines that once intimidated me. About what this becomes, I said. He did not answer immediately. He stepped closer, but not close enough to crowd me. It becomes whatever you allow it to become, he replied. I will not define it without you. That word again. Allow. Not claim. Not take. Allow. You are used to control, I said quietly. Yes, he admitted. But I am not interested in controlling you. I searched his expression for even a trace of calculation. I found none. Then what are you interested in? I asked. His voice lowered slightly, steady and certain. Building something that does not require me to raise my voice in a crowded room to protect it. The memory of that night flickered through my mind. The silence. The weight of his declaration. You regret it, I said softly. He shook his head once. I regret the way I said it. Not why I said it. My breath caught for just a second. And why did you? He held my gaze without hesitation. Because the idea of someone else deciding your value felt unacceptable. The honesty in his answer was not dramatic. It was simple, direct. You know I can decide my own value, I said. I do, he replied. I simply refuse to let someone else reduce it. Silence wrapped around us, but this time it felt warm instead of tense. I realized then that the man who once reacted on instinct was now choosing patience. Choosing respect. Choosing me. If this continues, I said carefully, it has to remain equal. It will, he answered without pause. Not because you demand it, but because I want it. The distinction mattered. I took a slow breath and stepped closer, closing the space between us by my own decision. His hand hovered briefly near mine, waiting. I let my fingers brush against his first. A simple contact. No ownership. No spectacle. Just choice. And in that quiet moment under the city lights, I understood something clearly. Power can intimidate. It can dominate. It can silence a room. But the kind of power that lasts is the kind that knows when to wait. And Ethan Romano was finally learning how to wait for me. Peace is fragile when it grows in the shadow of power. I felt that the morning, everything shifted again. It was a Tuesday, ordinary and gray, the kind of day Manhattan wears like a uniform. I was reviewing final details for a charity auction when my phone buzzed with a number I had not seen in over a week. I hesitated before answering. Claire Bennett. Good morning, Lucas said smoothly. His voice carried no tension, no trace of the rivalry that had once crackled beneath it. That made it worse. What do you want? I asked calmly. Only to apologize, he replied. It seems my interest caused unnecessary complications. I leaned back in my chair, eyes on the skyline beyond my office window. It did. A soft chuckle came through the line. You have always been direct. I respect that. Silence followed, deliberate and measured. There is a benefit this Saturday, he continued. Several shared donors will attend. I thought it wise to assure you there will be no discomfort. The word discomfort felt carefully chosen. That is appreciated, I said evenly. Then we understand each other, he replied. Completely. When the call ended, I stared at my reflection in the glass for a long moment. It felt resolved. Too resolved. An hour later, Ethan called. I could hear something restrained in his breathing before he even spoke. He contacted you. It was not a question. Yes. And I recounted the conversation without embellishment. He listened without interruption. When I finished, there was a long pause. He is repositioning, Ethan said quietly. What does that mean? I asked. It means he does not like losing ground. I felt a familiar tightening in my chest. Not fear, but awareness. You promised one conversation, I reminded him gently. And I kept that promise, he replied. His voice remained controlled, but I could hear the edge of calculation returning. Claire, if he approaches you at this benefit, you leave. Immediately. I closed my eyes briefly. You do not get to issue directives. Silence. Then a softer tone. You are right. A breath. I am concerned. That is all. I walked to the window again, watching traffic flow below like currents in a river. You cannot shield me from every room I enter, I said quietly. I am not trying to shield you, he replied. I am trying to make sure no one mistakes your independence for vulnerability. That distinction mattered. Then trust me, I said. Trust that I can stand in a room without being claimed or protected. Another pause. When he spoke again, the tension had eased. I do trust you. A beat. I am still learning how to trust the room. I almost smiled at that. It was the most honest admission he had made yet. Saturday, I said carefully. We go together. Not as a declaration. Not as a warning. Just as two people who chose to be there. His answer came steady and sure. Together. When the call ended, I realized something important. The rivalry had not disappeared. It had evolved. But so had we. The man who once reacted, without thinking, now paused before speaking. And I, who once bristled at the idea of standing beside him, now understood the difference between being claimed and being chosen. Saturday would test that difference. And this time, I was ready. Saturday arrived wrapped in winter light and quiet anticipation. The benefit was held at the Whitmore Gallery on the Upper West Side, a restored brick building with floor-to-ceiling windows and polished concrete floors that reflected the glow of suspended glass fixtures. When I stepped out of the car, the air was crisp, just over 45 degrees, sharp enough to keep my thoughts clear. Ethan was already there, waiting by the entrance. No grand gesture. No entourage visible. Just a tailored dark coat, and that steady presence that no longer felt intimidating. It felt grounding. He did not reach for me immediately. He offered his arm, silent, patient. I chose to take it. Inside, the gallery hummed with conversation and soft jazz drifting from a trio near the back wall. Donors moved between abstract paintings and sculpted installations, champagne flutes catching the light. We entered together, not as a spectacle, not as a statement. Simply aligned. I could feel the shift in attention, subtle but undeniable. Heads turned. Conversations paused for half a second longer than necessary. Ethan did not tighten his grip. He did not scan the room like a battlefield. He stayed beside me. Equal pace. Equal distance. You are steady, he murmured quietly. So are you, I replied. And it was true. The tension that once crackled around him had softened into something measured. 20 minutes passed without incident. We spoke with donors, discussed upcoming projects, moved through the gallery like two people accustomed to being observed. Then I saw Lucas near the far wall, speaking with a small group beneath a large monochrome canvas. He noticed us almost instantly. His expression remained polite, composed. He excused himself from his conversation and approached at an unhurried pace. My heartbeat remained steady. That alone felt like victory. Good evening, he greeted smoothly. You look well. I am, I replied evenly. Ethan inclined his head slightly, acknowledgement without invitation. Silence hovered for a brief second, not heavy, just charged with history. Lucas's gaze flickered between us, assessing, recalculating. I trust there have been no further complications, he said lightly. None, I answered. I appreciate your discretion. A faint smile curved his lips. We all benefit from clarity. Ethan remained quiet, not out of restraint, but out of choice. He allowed the conversation to center on me. That detail did not go unnoticed. Lucas studied him for a moment, perhaps expecting interruption. It did not come. Then I wish you both an enjoyable evening, Lucas concluded. No challenge. No provocation. He stepped away as smoothly as he had approached. I exhaled slowly once he was out of earshot. You did not speak, I observed softly. It was not my place, Ethan replied. It was yours. I turned to him fully then, understanding settling deeper than any dramatic confrontation could have. The man who once drew a line in a crowded ballroom had just allowed me to stand alone in one. Not because he lacked strength, but because he respected mine. The music swelled slightly, the murmur of the room returning to normal. I felt something shift permanently in that moment. Not rivalry, not tension, resolution. Thank you, I said quietly. His eyes met mine, steady and certain. For what? For standing beside me, I answered, instead of in front of me. His expression softened, just enough to reveal what words rarely did. That was always the goal, he said. And for the first time since this began, I realized the power between us was no longer about who claimed whom. It was about who chose to remain. The night at the gallery did not end with fireworks or headlines. It ended quietly, which somehow felt more powerful. We left just after 10, the city air colder now, dipping closer to 40 degrees. The streets were alive in that steady Manhattan way, headlights stretching into ribbons of light, conversations spilling out of restaurants onto the sidewalk. Ethan walked beside me, not guiding, not claiming, just present. Are you satisfied? He asked softly as we paused at the curb. I considered the question carefully. Yes, I answered. Because nothing happened. A faint smile touched his mouth. Sometimes nothing is the victory. I looked at him then, really looked at him. The man who once let instinct speak before reason now measured every step with intention. Not because he had grown weaker, but because he had grown aware. You changed, I said quietly. He shook his head once. No, I learned. The distinction mattered. A black car waited across the street, engine idling. He did not open the door immediately. He did not assume I would leave with him. What happens now? He asked, not as a strategist, not as a rival, but as a man standing in the open. I felt the weight of everything that had unfolded since that first crowded ballroom. The silence after his impulsive words. The tension. The choice. The patience. Now, I said slowly, we move forward without reacting to ghosts. His eyes searched mine, steady and sure. And if the world tries to test that? I allowed myself a small smile. Then we answer it together. Not because you need to defend me, and not because I need to prove anything, but because we decide to. He stepped closer then, just enough that the space between us felt intentional. His hand lifted slightly, waiting, always waiting. I reached for it first. The contact was simple, warm, real. No audience, no rivalry, just choice. I never meant to claim you, he said quietly, the city noise humming softly around us. I know, I replied. You meant to protect something you did not understand yet. He exhaled softly, almost a laugh. And now? I met his gaze without hesitation. Now you understand. The traffic light shifted from red to green, casting a faint glow across the pavement. Life continued around us, indifferent to private revelations. He squeezed my hand once, not possessive, not demanding. Grounded. You were never mine, he said gently. You were always yours. I felt something settle deep inside my chest at those words. Peace. Not the fragile kind built on tension, but the steady kind built on respect. And you, I replied softly, are not standing in front of me anymore. His eyes warmed, that rare softness breaking through the controlled exterior. No, he said, I am standing beside you. And as we stepped forward together into the moving current of the city, I understood something that had taken 13 chapters to learn. Power can command a room in seconds. But love, real love, is quieter. It waits. It listens. And when it finally speaks, it does not say you are mine. It says I am here.